So we are having to say we had a small hiccup there, so apologies for the delay, folks. So just to catch you up to speed, and again, apologies for the delay in getting the stream up there. We did have a lobby restart due to some issues that occurred, and then we had an issue on the front end with the stream, which means that it wasn't pushed as intended, and that ended up resulting in us meaning we're going to be a few minutes late on the jump in terms of quality, and we are going to be taking a quick look as to where we stand. So thank you everyone for your patience, and as we finish the out laps, finish the banker laps with 12 minutes to go in qualifying, give you a quick rundown. It is Will Lewis currently in the top spot with a 121.328, Jan Halliday with 0.335, and JST with a 0.341 in that third place. So just a few milliseconds splitting them, and then you can see the rest of the field dropping down.
Yes, indeed. So you've not missed a great deal of action here in WOR Tier 2. Just the initial banker laps, as Sack was saying. Paul Eichelmeier is actually doing several laps on the medium tyres. He himself saying that he's done very well. He said no practice, but these being his initial sighter laps, getting himself familiar with how his car is going to behave here at the track. So he's done 3 laps with a 24.839. His best time so far, but he's still getting those, or trying to work that one down. Jack Humphreys, Paul's teammate for tonight, is just going again. Now, I wonder, Jack was actually very, very slow, if coming out at all, during the initial wave. I wonder if he was waiting for a clearer bit of track, but we're seeing a kind of constant churn this time. We're not seeing a big wave of laps and then no one doing anything for the rest of the session, which is nice to see. But, oh dear, the good old illegal blocking penalty has struck, and it struck Leroy Brown, unfortunately. Jack's in a bit of bother here, as he's just happening upon a bit of traffic. The Aston Martin jumping very well out of the way. But it wasn't Jan Halliday, so therefore it was Lefted, who was one of the first to break covers as the quality session began. But Jack then just coming through the banked left-hander at turn 9. We'll see where he's able to slot himself for the time being, coming into the hotel section now. The rapid fire of turns 10 through to 15. Flirts with the barrier, as you have to do on the exit of turn 14. Now coming up to the final turn. How is it going to navigate this one? Uses most of the rumble strip down to the line. That's a 21.744, just half a second separating 15 cars in this grid.
And it's such a tight grid, because everyone is now pushing. They've got their laps on the field. They know their prospective benchmarks. And now everyone is going to be giving it absolutely everything in these next 10 minutes. We're on board with Lefted here, as someone who went out, say, pretty early on, ended up yielding a little bit in order to get themselves a bit of track space, but only P13 right now. They've got to improve at least a couple tenths. Looking at some of the data, it looks like they're section 1, so we're coming out and coming into turn 5. Their section 1 and part of their sector 2 is looking a little bit slower than some of the rest of the field. I wonder how much setups are going to be playing a role here.
A huge part, I would think. You've got to have a car that is very, very well balanced. You can't just rely on straight line speed here in Abu Dhabi. You've got to have a car that will behave itself in the corners. There are plenty of them, 16 in all, and a lot of them are very rapid fire as well. So you've got to have a car that will behave itself pretty much in every condition, which is very difficult to achieve. You've got to sacrifice somewhere, but generally you'll go for more. This isn't your Monza. You're not going to just put on the skinniest wing you possibly can. Well, you could, but I wouldn't recommend it. You'll be absolutely great down the back straight, but you'll be absolutely mugged everywhere else. Louis Welch in the Alfa Romeo 121.283, just starting to whittle away at that top spot that was held by Will Lewis. Still just under 8 minutes to go. Still plenty of lap times to set. Yannick Schmidt now 121.173 in the Williams.
So we were on board with Lefted, but I'm not sure what happened. The camera completely froze, and then next thing we knew, they were into the pit. So I think they might have had a spin at the last corner, and they just didn't get a massive run like they hoped. Not really sure what happened there. Unfortunately, we didn't get the camera on our side. And we are going to be looking around. Say Joseph Loke is going to be starting a lap here. And we're going to keep an eye on them as we see what we can do. One of the sort of prospective top drivers, Yannick Schmidt, is going to be with a 173 to beat. And over a 10th in qualifying at this level. Well, that's just astronomical in terms of gap, is it not?
Absolutely. So you got to think a 10th separates 3rd to 8th. You know, 5 cars in the literal blink of an eye. That is how close this grid is. In all my years of commentary, I've always, I've remained so just astounded at how close these qualifying times are. And it leads to some incredible racing, which we'll very much enjoy here for round number 6 of season 15 here in WOR Tier 2.
As we stick on board with Joseph Loke here, he is looking like a good run so far from the Red Bull car. You've got a few more drivers who are going to be pushing through. Caden Lott is going to be putting a 294 on the boards. Bogdan Moldovan did get a bit of a run earlier and put themselves up into P7 with Jan Halliday. He's going to be pipping it by a single millisecond. Joseph Loke's going to come across the line. Will Lewis, 0.115 in the McLaren just ahead. And what is Loke going to do? That is an equal. That is a perfectly equal lap to the point where the game has signified them both as having the fastest lap. In fact, the game's got confused. They're so close together that they've got the exact same time. And Loke is got the fastest lap according to the game, despite being P2.
To the thousandths of a second that is matched between Joseph Loke and Will Lewis. Absolutely phenomenal. I think the only reason Will Lewis has that top spot is because he set that lap before Joseph did. And it wasn't exactly by much. It was by about, what, 3 or 4 car lengths at most. Oh, yes, we're in for a good evening tonight.
We are in for a good evening indeed. And we're on board, say, Tom97, Tom Martinez, who has been a driver who we've seen fluctuating in terms of pace. As they were on their cooldown lap here, it looks like they haven't got the ERS, but we've seen them fluctuating in terms of pace. Some days they're at the bottom, some days they're fighting near the top. You never really can predict with this driver, and that can be good sometimes, but really what you need is consistency.
Yes, consistency is absolutely key. Look at Yannick Schmidt, hasn't won a race all season long, is leading the championship by 19 points coming into this round, and his arch rival, his closest rival I should say, Daniel Kjotsen, isn't here. So that speaks for itself. I don't know if a championship has been won with no wins at all, not that I can immediately think of, but he's certainly proving that consistency is absolutely true. He's not finished lower than 4th all season long.
Yeah, everyone's going to be heading back into the pits now as we're coming up to the final few minutes. We've got 4 minutes, 10 seconds left in qualifying here, and everyone has, for the most part, put a time on the board. Tycho Hardy, in fact, is the only driver who hasn't put a time down, and we saw them earlier. They were really struggling as they went to the infield on the 3rd sector and skipping over the curbs. Lefted is going to get an invalidation. I think they were really pushing this lap, but they are going to be going into the pits just like everyone else. Jack Humphreys, only car out on track.
Indeed, Paul Eschelmeyer actually trying the hard tyres out. Again, as I said earlier, he's essentially just feeling what the car is going to be doing with those different tyre combats. And they can afford you as much as 0.6 of a second between the compounds. So it's definitely worth, if he hasn't had a chance to do it many laps of preparation for tonight's race, it's definitely worth him just getting a feel for what the car will do. I'm sure he's familiar with the actual layout of the track, whilst it's not as ingrained in our racing DNA as much as Silverstone, Monza, Monaco, things like that. It's been around long enough for true fans, regular F1 racers to know what to expect from the circuit. So then you need to just get an idea of how your car is going to behave. So you know that generally you can attack turn 14, for instance, in a particular way. But how will this car, with this setup, with this set of tyres, behave itself? All of these little points matter when it comes to race time. The less kind of conscious thought you put into it, the more kind of mental energy you've got for pure racing.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, Paul Eshelmeier is sort of taking the optimized strategy of choosing to focus on the race. I think he's sort of made peace. I think he's made peace with the fact that he's not going to be lighting the timing sheets on fire in terms of one lap pace. So instead, he's choosing to focus his efforts on, in his books, where it matters, the race. Because if you're not going to get any gain, as Leroy Brown is going to be getting five place grid penalty. I believe
that's his second one. So.
I believe that will result in a lobby restart, if I am correct. So
that's my understanding as well. Yes.
Yeah. So we have just got the confirmation they are going to be restarting after quali in order to nullify the grid place penalties, and that is going to, of course, introduce a little bit of a delay in this.
It will, but it'll definitely be worth the wait when we've got so many amazingly talented drivers all ready to do battle once more. Now we're in the final 3 minutes. This is what I affectionately call the Banzai phase. As Andre Molnar, my God, just got the tail of the Alpine really, really loose coming through turns 1 and 2. Not sure he's going to be improving the order. He's 800s down on this lap already, and that car looks horrendously loose just coming through turn 5. So he may struggle to find any more time. You'll have an opportunity to make any changes because we'll be going for that lobby restart. All 20 cars out there on track. Final laps now coming to the front.
They're all coming through here now, and that Alpine, that A523 of Andre Molnar is looking ridiculously skittish. I feel like he's really front-loaded the car to try and get that turn in, where these cars can be a lot more stable through the corner, especially mid-corner on throttle. What this does mean is that sometimes you can get a little bit overzealous with tuning, and it looks like here Molnar is really struggling with that car to the point where he's seemingly losing the rear a lot more than he'd otherwise like to. You've got a few more cars that are out on field, like Yannick Schmidt, for instance, who is going to be chasing down that top time. They set such a statement in the mid-segment of qualifying, and they want to be keeping that dream alive, as we've got a few more cars who are going to be coming through to their laps soon. We have 10 seconds on the clock, so crucially, if anyone gets past in that crucial time frame, they are going to be awarded with another attempt should things go sour. But hopefully, they don't need it. Doesn't look like anyone is going to claim that. Yannick Schmidt across the line is going to be improved. He's going to be a millisecond shy. We have 3 drivers within a single millisecond. You just do not see that. You do not see that in this kind of racing. You've got Caden Lutt, who's going to be dropping out. Valentino Nabella is going to be getting an improvement. 2 Aston Martins now. You've got Lefted coming across. Is going to be P13. Jan Halliday up into P6. And you can see a few more drivers who are coming in now.
Right then, let's get the last laps done. Who's got what it takes to climb up the field? That's one of the hands. That's Tycho Hardy up into 11th place. Oh, that's an invalidation for Joseph Lowe just coming through. I was riding on board with him coming through 14. He can do no more. So, we don't entirely know who's going to start on pole. We think it's going to be Will Lewis. He lost 900s to Joseph Lowe towards the end there. Who is still out there? JST. I think his day is done. I think, he's backed out of his lap, so he will not be improving. Everybody else may well already be done. Oh, Jack Humphries coming over the line. Can he improve? He's up to 6th with a 21.225. That is everybody. That is your grid for tonight. 1,000th of a second separating 3 cars. And then another 10th of a second separates 4th down to 7th. Good grief. It is unbelievably close. Bring it on as far as I'm concerned.
An amazing, amazing drive from all of these drivers, but especially those top 3 who, and you even see there, say plus or minus, they've got it completely bang on. Loke only got the P2 because he said it after, but Will Lewis is going to be taking the pole position here in Abu Dhabi. We've got Yannick Schmidt in P3 with Williams Racing. You've got Louis Welch in P4, Declan Barrett P5, Jack Humphries P6, JST P7, Jan Halliday, Caden Lutt, Bogdan Moldafan, Mirko Suriano, Tycho Hardy, Leroy Brown, Valentino Nabella, Wilson Hall, Lefted, Cordon, Andre Molnar, Tom Martinez, and Paul Eschenmeyer is going to complete your grid. We'll be taking a quick word from our sponsors over at GridFinder, and we'll be back with you very soon to discuss the race ahead. Alright folks, and welcome back. So we are going to be a little bit delayed in getting into the race because we have to start the lobby once more. For those who aren't familiar, when we have a case of illegal blocking, we have to restart the lobby in order to rectify the positions. Just because the game is often very aggressive when it comes to handing those kinds of penalties out, and it is often in error. So we often err on the safe side, we restart the lobby, and then people can start from their positions as intended as they were. But what a track and what a performance, Kodiak.
Wow, absolutely so. Now this is, if the quality times are anything to go by, certainly the first half of the grid are going to be really, really, really close together. Quality is one thing, race is another. Yes, obvious statement again, but drivers can fall into the trap of practicing that one hot lap and not putting as much practice into their race, the actual race endurance. It is a 50% distance race, so 45-ish minutes. If you're under pressure or you're trying to apply pressure for the vast majority of that amount of time, believe me, it takes its toll. And if you're not conditioned for it, you can run out of mental energy quite quickly. I can speak from experience on that one. I've done it. So, when I'm starting to get really knackered towards the end of the race, you've still got 10 minutes to go, and you start making really silly mistakes you haven't been doing all race long. You start wandering off the road or missing your braking point, whatever it is. When you're in a field this close, those little mistakes can be devastating.
Yeah, and those little mistakes very frequently add up as well. So we tend to say that in a lot of competitive racing, or a lot of competitive esports as a whole, the first to make a mistake or the first to tilt is the first to lose, because unless you can get your head back in the game, unless you can tighten the reins to get yourself back in that top form and do so quickly, one mistake becomes two, becomes three, becomes four, becomes yourself at the back of the grid with nowhere to go. So really what separates and what brings out the best of these drivers is not so much having the initial pace, not so much having the optimal strategy, but it's when you get challenged and being able to keep cool and calm under those difficult situations, under that pressure, lap in, lap out. That is what makes a great driver.
So true. Too many times, I've absolutely buckled under pressure. I know there's a driver behind me. It may well be quicker, but instead of focusing on my own line, I'm looking behind me and thinking they're getting closer. I'm putting too much mental energy into the fact that someone is behind me getting closer, and that makes me make mistakes as a driver, and thus adding pressure to the fact that they're getting closer even quicker. So a lot of these drivers are very seasoned. They'll know how to kind of compartmentalize pressure being put on them against how they not just how they handle it, but how they go about their racecraft. These aren't newcomers to racing. You don't get to the level of T2 instantly. Nobody does. These guys have raced and raced and raced for years in many cases. Some representing some major hitters in esports. So they know how to race. They know how to deal with it. Us mere mortals are still learning that.
Yeah, and I love that sentiment, because you're exactly right. Being in these high tiers is not just about pace. It's proving that you can bring that heat race in, race out. If you came in with some absolutely god-level talent, you would get put probably in tier 3 and tier 4. just because while you may have the amazing pace on the books, it's for two reasons. One, you've come in fresh. No one knows you. You need to prove that you are not just lightning in a bottle and you can hold your own for more than a few races, for more than a few stints. Because remember, I say a lot of quali and placement for these kinds of leagues are things like hot laps. And that is never going to be fully representative, short of actually having your full races and seeing. That's why we see in the early stages of some leagues and some tiers that you do get movement up or down. It's because you might have amazing one-lap pace, but when it comes to the racecraft, you can either be even stronger. It's not uncommon to see promotions from lower tiers to higher ones, or you may find that that pace is a little bit of a one trick and you can't quite hold it. This is also the inflection point for a lot of, as you say, really highbrow talent in the esports scene. We're talking development drivers, we're talking reserve drivers. Heck, in the case of some of these drivers on track, we are talking about real life racers too. GP3, etc.
Absolutely true. And that's another thing that a lot of those that are maybe less familiar with the esports scene as a whole may not necessarily see, is that these drivers are representing more than just themselves. Look at the list of how many of them have an abbreviation: PSR, TF10, TES, etc., etc. They're representing a squad of some description. Now, if they were just representing a loose affiliation of themselves and their mates, fine, okay, don't take it very seriously. But we've all seen people lose racing contracts because of online conduct, or misconduct, a little more accurately. Now, whilst necessarily there may not be that much pressure on the likes of WOR T2, you've got to imagine, exactly as you were saying earlier, Sappi, you're in the very top tiers of a very highly respected racing league. So if you're representing the likes of the F1 Esports teams or major teams, TF10, Louis Welch, prime example, you will lose very respected seats with very respected teams if you bring that team into disrepute. And by racing badly, not really what I mean, but by bad racing conduct, you could actually really impact where you're going in your esports lifetime.
Yeah, I think that especially as we've sort of transitioned to the modern world of esports, we have learned more than anything that it is not just about maybe say your raw talent, it's also about how you conduct yourself. It's that, yes, people are interested in the best of the best, but they're also interested in the people behind it, in how they conduct themselves on and off the track. And what we have seen in the past as well is people who have been amazing talents, but have maybe been a little bit too spicy, and they've been asked to sort of leave their reservations at the door. They haven't done that, and then they haven't seen much of a pathway forward. The big thing with esports and with anyone when you're trying to get into a competitive scene, a community at large, is that it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice.
That is a fantastic mantra. I like it, but absolutely true. If you could be the greatest talent, but if you back it up with a very negative attitude, you will not find a very productive path ahead of you. It really is that simple. We like personalities. Nobody likes talking to a rock for a person, but there has to be a balance there. And we are counting down to the big 5 lights out.
And the time is ticking down. We are just loading into the lobby now. We're making sure that everyone has a chance to get in, and then we will be trackside, ready for round 6 of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix here at PC Tier 2 of WOR. And looking at the calendar as we've crossed over that blessed halfway point, and you've seen the standings, we have got a brilliant sort of mid-season that we've just had. We came off the Netherlands, which was fiery in and of itself, and now we've got Abu Dhabi, where 3 drivers are separated by a single millisecond here in qualifying. I just wonder, can this season get much better? I don't know if it can.
You've got some amazing tracks ahead of us as well after here. It's Kota, one of my favorite tracks in the world, and I don't have any reservation about admitting that. Las Vegas, such a difficult circuit. Barriers millimeters or pixels away from ripping your car to shreds. Then it's Suzuka, then Silverstone, the home of British racing. It is my absolute favorite track. And again, come at me if you don't like it. I don't mind. But we're heading trackside. So it is time for people to load in. And then we are going to get the all-important 5 lights. And now it's just that tense moment of waiting for the inevitable to happen.
This is that crucial moment of everyone getting their setups in, everyone making sure that they're ready to go. This is go time. The pressure is on, and the pressure is going to be mounting. Drivers, without a doubt, are going to feel so tense. You can cut the tension in the air with a knife, and you'd still struggle. That's how much could be on the line, especially when we're talking about some of our key championship protagonists and making some of the opportunities, like the fact that Yeltsin isn't here. For the likes of Loke, this is golden opportunity. This is prime time. He needs to perform.
Absolutely so, and being just shy of a race win behind Yannick. So, Yannick has a slight amount, less pressure on his shoulders, but that is by far not an insurmountable amount of points he leads the championship by. So if he's out of the points and Joseph takes the win, Yannick no longer leads. But we head trackside. Go, Sappy, go!
And this is it, the 5 red lights, the track is hot, and we are about to go racing. It is away, and we're about to jump in. It's a good getaway, it's a good start from Joseph Lowe, as is Will Lewis. We can see he's made a really good lunge, and immediately there's going to be moves down the bottom end of the field, as Yannick Schmidt is going to be pushing up into P3. A lot of tussling coming in the mid-pack, and you've got everyone just trying to get their position as early as possible. You can see 2, 3 abreast in places as we're coming through to turn 5. It is early sunset, and that was an Alfa Romeo the wrong way. That was Louis Welch.
Oh, from hero to zero very quickly. Paul Ostermeyer has had trouble as well. Lefted has gone for soft tyres as well. Everybody is on hards except for Lefted and Tom 97. So Tom Martinez trying something different as, my goodness, Lefted squeezed onto the apex of turn 6. Can't make any headway just yet, but still lots of jostling going on. Jack Humphries gets ahead of Jan Halliday on the run down towards turn 9. Now, who is going to be bravest on the brakes here? It's not a huge braking zone here now, but it's all about maintaining that momentum. Now people have started to kind of figure out where they're going to be. I'm going to keep an eye on Lefty because that is a brave... Oh my God, he's just banzai the inside of Valentino Lebeno. He's tried to use that force to the outside under the hotel. Oh no, that's Jan Halliday. Jan has had trouble through the hotel section. He's moving, but not particularly quickly. But Will Lewis leads the field over the line, and that is Bogdan Moldovan, the first into the pits.
Bogdan, Tom Martinez, and Jan Halliday are all going to be coming into the pits. They all had a little bit of an altercation. Surprised Louis Welch didn't also go in because he, last we checked, was sideways at turn 5. So he's definitely looking at a difficult race, and he's going to have to work his way up pretty hard. Looking around the field, Lefted, I've got to say, he's been very bold. He's definitely been risky when it comes to his strategy, because to be down in his position and to be on the softs, that means he's going to have to pull an absolute masterwork of overtaking capability, especially in the next 5 laps. When DRS becomes enabled at lap 3, it's going to be getting pretty difficult if he can stay in that train.
Will Lewis did have 7/10 of a second lead, but that has absolutely evaporated. Joseph Lowe's car is really, really loose, as that's trouble for Cordigolo, I think it was. No, I don't beg your pardon, no, it wasn't. It was one of the Astons, I think. Oh, it might have been Jan Halliday that caused a brief yellow flag there. But the top 3 are very close together. The DRS train goes from first right the way down to 16th. So remember what I was saying earlier about one mistake being absolutely catastrophic? You can lose a lot of positions if you just wander too wide somewhere, or at worst, start to spin. Lefted, unsurprisingly, with the fastest lap at the moment. Now, he's actually broken DRS back to Caden Luke at almost the perfect time, as DRS is now available to our drivers.
The DRS is going to be the big turning point for a lot of them. As a brief peek down the bottom end, you can see Wilson Hall is going to be looking to get a bit of a move. But all eyes are at the front of the field, as now Loke is going to have DRS, and this might be where he starts to mount that critical attack against Will Lewis, but he's going to be staying behind. He's going to be playing the very smart strategic move of staying behind the McLaren, and in order to get himself the second DRS. This is a prime example of playing brains over brawn in this circuit.
Yeah, he could have easily bandside past Will Lewis. He had the speed and breezes past the McLaren coming down in towards turn 9. But we know how powerful the DRS is. And that McLaren is now going to glue itself to the diffuser of a Joseph Loke then. And no doubt this was, yeah, he's going to try the same move on Joseph Loke. And wow, the tail is so loose on the back of that Red Bull. So Joseph Loke is really, he's got that car very, very lively. It's working for him in the moment, but that makes the potential for a mistake that much higher. Valentino Labella takes the fastest lap of the race for the time being. And that's Paul Essemer, who was a last-minute draft in, but he now comes into the pits very, very early on those hard tyres.
As I wonder if we got a little bit of damage. There's usually at this stage, that is the only time you really see someone going for an early pit like they have. You see, that has left it going to be going into P8, getting past the Ferrari, the Monza spec Ferrari at that, with a very striking livery indeed. But Mirko Suriano is going to be saying, no, I don't care if you're on the softs, I'm going for it. And that was a little bit dicey between the two of them. Lefted is going to have to yield. He doesn't really have a choice. Suriano in P8.
And Valentino Labella is also hustling hard for that 9th position. Now the Ferrari looks down the outside line coming down into turn 9. No change in position, but again, that Aston does not look very happy. It is squiggly even through turn 9. Yannick Schmidt is very close to the back of the McLaren. No, Will Lewis is now. Everybody seems to be really, really skitty, which that terrifies the life out of me. I don't like a very snappy car. Some drivers do. Some people prefer, to get the car rotated in, to get the tail loose. I'm the other way. I prefer to keep the car settled so the thing doesn't snap on me. And these cars are not exactly designed for drifting. So the minute they start to let go, they inevitably snap you the other way, and that's off into the wall. Yeah, but either way, everybody is hanging on to them really, really well.
They're a lot tamer than they were in prior iterations, but that doesn't change the fact that these are driving machines. They are absolute weapons that they are not to be trifled with. You can set them up a lot looser like a lot of these drivers have. That will help with the turn-in. I think they're trying to play to the very sort of angular stop-start nature of this circuit. Even with the reprofiling, there's a lot of hairpins, there's a lot of heavy braking zones. So having that ability to get the rotation on the car is going to be invaluable, especially setting up for the second DRS here. As we're on board with Yannick Schmidt, they're both going to have the DRS, Lewis and Schmidt, but they're not going to be materializing any moves. Instead, they're just going to be trying to close the gap on Joseph Loke. I wonder whether, either by intention or not, these two are going to form a semi-pact of sorts, because they're going to be the 3, maybe 4 of them if JST gets involved. They're going to be playing a very long game of lead leapfrog.
Could well be. As I say, the drivers are the only ones that know the answer to that. I'm keeping an eye on Lefted as well. He's 7/10 behind Mirko Suriano, and he is opting to get rid of those soft tyres now. He's burned the best out of them. Bearing in mind, the cars are heavy at this point in time. Those soft tyres are just absolute sponges by now. This track is an absolute tyre muncher, which is why people have tended to start on the hardest compound. Paul Esmer has gone onto the soft tyres, curiously, but I think he's kind of realised that he's here for a bit of fun. He's not really taking part in the main bulk of racing. Now, Lefted, yes, very much so. Now, interestingly, Lefted has gone onto medium tyres. That's a long old way to try and get a set of mediums, but I've made that call before and been completely wrong. We'll see what he can do in the Aston Martin.
And it does seem to me, I wonder how many soft tyres he actually used in qualifying, because if he has 2 soft compounds left, he could go soft, medium, soft if he's feeling a little bit risky, but as you've said, This is an absolute decimator when it comes to the tyres. We see a little bit of a tussle up ahead. These three could be getting very close to one another, as Will Lewis is going to be coming up to the rear of Joseph Loke. And then while a move is not yet taking place, you can see these drivers just in the little micro movements, how they're placing their car, looking to the left, to the right. They're trying to aim for one, they're inching for one, and that patience is starting to wane.
It is a little bit, but you can, exactly as you say, but you can judge by the body language of the cars that they're waiting pretty much for the second half of the race. Who's going to pull the trigger first for the pit lane? Only they themselves will know. And equally, drivers can be waiting for somebody else to make the call before them. So they'll do exactly what their arch rival is not doing, kind of thing. We'll see. Now, Will Lewis, again, he had the overspeed. Oh, he's gone in deep. He's gone in deep at turn 5. Is this an opportunity for Yannick Schmidt? Yannick nearly backends the McLaren. Well, Will's going to have to get on with it and close the Red Bull back down, which he does. He's likely to stay behind, is he? Oh, he thought about it. He's committed. That's close. Side by side, but no change at the moment. Again, Will Lewis, if he's going to make the move, he's going to do it here. He didn't want to leave himself open for counter-attack along the straight. There he goes. So he ended up, I wonder whether he made the move because he kind of ended up with too much overspeed. Only he knows whether he intended to make that move. Is he going to try and dance off into the distance? Jack Humphries and Tiger Hardy side by side right behind them. The Haas with the inside line regained 6th position. Oh, he had to get his elbows out to hang on to that one.
Yeah, a little bit of elbows out is where this is coming to now. It's a little bit of push coming to shove for some of them. And you see, I think, yeah, Will Lewis, he had the overspeed and a little bit more than he judged and anticipated for. So he had to kind of get a little bit too close for comfort to that Red Bull. He had to remain committed to his strategy in the end, so he did yield, but it got very close. Nearly could have got very dicey, but now I want to see what Loke does in retaliation. Is he going to go for the early move, because he's getting very close already to the McLaren, or is he going to follow the standard cadence we've seen so far? Lefted is going to be getting fastest lap on those mediums.
Caden Luke is in, new front wing on the front of the Haas as well. And just look at the pack. It's all getting very, very fidgety out there. Several side-by-sides, and Loke nearly, again, rolls reverse from a lap ago. And Yannick Schmidt has decided he's had enough of staring in the back of the Red Bull. Now Joseph Loke's got a decision to make. Does he try and get past the McLaren, or is he purely just going to box in the Williams? Oh, he thought about it. Oh, but that's too deep for Will Lewis. He couldn't hang on to the inside of turn 9. Left the door wide open for the Red Bull. Now the Williams is side by side with the McLaren, but he bows out of it. He doesn't fancy going side by side through the hotel section. So Joseph Lowe retains the lead. That's Jack Humphries. He's facing the wall. Oh, disaster for the AlphaTauri.
That is completely looking like an absolute bomb for Jack Humphries there. He's not going to be happy with that one. Oh, big wide arc for Valentino Abella. They went really wide at that final corner, turn 16. So they are going to be down. Yannick Schmidt pulling out of the Sector 3 attack. They just chose they're not going to be the place that they want to attack. It's not going to be the hill that they want to die on. And I think that is a testament as well to another hidden skill that we see in these top drivers. It's knowing exactly when to attack, and often that means knowing exactly when not to.
100% true. Would be very, very easy for the lesser experienced driver to just, oh, I have an opportunity, I must take it. And again, Will Lewis had the chance there to take the lead, but opted not to. He wants to get the better exit out of turn 7, and there he goes. He's now going to try and draw alongside the Rebel. He hasn't quite got as much overspeed though, but he has got enough. And oh, here comes Yannick Schmidt, outside line of turn 9, tries to box in Joseph Lowe behind the McLaren, and has he got away with it? Coming up towards turn 10 and 11, the inside line, the Williams up to second. He's gone squiggly, but he has managed to keep the Red Bull behind. Exactly the point we were trying to make. He planned exactly what he was going to do, boxing Joseph Lowe behind Will Lewis, leaving no room for counter-attack, and he's taken second as a result. Brilliantly driven.
It's brilliantly done there from Yannick Schmidt, and that is a P2 well earned. A lot of bravery, a lot of commitment, balancing that car on the knife edge where we've already seen them so skittish in relatively normal situations. And what that leaves us with is a masterclass of an overtake as kind of, well, I don't even know really how to phrase it other than just kind of a mini masterpiece.
Absolutely so, but lap after lap, the situation is changing. When you've got just two drivers that are vying for a position, you kind of know how it's going to go, punch and counter punch. But when you add a third, it completely changes that dynamic as here comes Joseph Loke to try and do to Yannick what Yannick did to him only a few laps ago. Can't quite get the drive he needs on the exit of turn 7. Now, is the Williams now going to use this opportunity to get past the McLaren of Will Lewis? Thinks about it. Oh, yeah, Joseph Loke nearly ran out of room there, but lives to fight another day. But he's keeping the pressure on. He's keeping that element of unknown. Yannick knows what he wants to do against the McLaren, but he doesn't know if Joseph has got a plan to surprise him with an attack exactly as Yannick did to him. So they know what the possibilities are, but they don't exactly know who is planning what and when. And that's what makes a 3 or more car battle that much more fascinating.
And yeah, the different dynamics coming into play and almost the level of expression you see in the cars. Like when Yannick Schmidt was thinking about that move on Will Lewis, you saw that little twitch almost as of panic from Joseph Loke as he was starting to run out of room and he was trying to think of his options where he could put his car to stay out of trouble. It's the little things like that, the little bits of expression that you see coming off of these cars and off of these drivers by extension, that you really start to see the story unfold. JST, for instance, he's really pushing hard to try and keep pace with these top 3. They continue to tussle, they continue to battle. Yannick Schmidt is going to be going very brave, and he's going to be going for the initial overtake. I wonder if Will Lewis is going to be planned for anything, but Joseph Loke, once again, is going to be pushing through the chicane. He's not just going to get it yet.
Ah, that's interesting. Yannick Schmidt breaking the mold here, gone for the move, but he's going to be assisting Dux and McLaren. Here comes Will Lewis. He backs out of it. He just bled out the throttle there, letting Yannick hold onto the lead for now. So Will had the overspeed. He had the opportunity. Again, he's chosen not to do it, playing the long game. But Yannick has just played the surprise there. No one expected the move down into turn 6. It's not the usual overtaking spot, but it's a valid move to take. It did leave him a little bit open to counter-attack, of course, down towards turn 9. But he's gotten the idea that Will wouldn't have taken the move. Either way, it's still half the race to go. So Yannick would have had the opportunity to counter-attack anyway. Still, this amazing ballet continues.
It is a ballet. It is truly a dance between drivers, a dance of craft and expert driving. And looking at these top 3, 4, 5, as they all stay within contention and even stretching all the way back down to P13, it's a few tenths between all of them. As if to form a perfect line, you see them all tussling. And Yannick Schmidt, I gotta say, that unorthodox move was really sort of what sold that for me. It really sort of what sold the good drive there. Will Lewis is going to be going for a little bit of an inside gap. Doesn't materialize into a move, but maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe he was just trying to put on pressure. And with Yannick Schmidt, that beautiful execution of that first DRS run, what it means is that now I think Lewis and Loke are a little bit spooked. They're expecting otherwise very standard moves like we've seen so many times, that second DRS. But for someone to go on the first and keep it, I wonder if that's thrown their kind of preconceptions into a little bit of a loop, and that unorthodox move has kind of unsettled them.
Absolutely so. I would think you're right there. And that's another aspect we haven't really mentioned about racing at this kind of level. Yes, this is league racing. Yes, there's no big contract or prize or anything like that other than bragging rights of being the champion of the season. However, the mental game is still just as strong. Getting in your opponent's head is still just as important as your on-track skill. And it's beyond that as well. It's dealing with the pressure and applying the pressure in the right way. Just keeping your opponent on edge. And all of these things we're seeing played out in really, really expert tones. Here we go again. On the way down towards turn 6, Will Lewis not looking to make the move, but Joseph Lowe barreled down the outside several times. He hasn't done it this time, but are we going to see an attack on Yannick Schmidt on the way down towards turn 9? Well, now that we've had kind of the mold broken, and here comes Joseph Lowe now with these call Will Lewis napping a little bit, and here comes the McLaren now inside line of turn 9, doesn't commit to it. So he was more interested in keeping Joseph Lowe behind him, but that probably put Yannick Schmidt slightly out of sorts. Again, surprising the Williams a little bit, or unless Yannick's able to keep an eye on everything going on behind him, as well as keep his car in the right place.
Yeah, finding that balance of your race versus others' race, because defending loses you time. Always. Getting off that ideal, optimal line is going to cost you time. So at this level, it's about balancing the time that you're going to lose with the position you're going to keep. And in Yannick Schmidt's case, he's got a fairly easy trade-off. He's been absolutely nailing the chicane into the second DRS zone to where people can make a challenge, but they're not often materializing into any form of moves. Will Lewis is the one that's in a really precarious position because he's trying so hard to catch up to Yannick Schmidt. He's not using that much of the ERS, curiously, so he's opting to save more or less a full tank. But he can't really move any further forward or he's just going to get leapfrogged again. Usually, I give drivers a little bit of a judgment when they let the battery sit at 100% because every corner is wasted energy. But in this track, in this unique situation, using the ERS means that you're going to get in a position you don't want to be.
And I think that's a bit dependent on the track you're at because you've got a lot of places where you're on the brakes here. But energy management is a very different beast when you're at a track that doesn't have an awful lot. I would use Monza as a great example. You've got very few braking points, therefore very few opportunities to regain that very crucial energy. So using as little as possible has a very different emphasis, as we see quite a few drivers choosing now halfway point to get into the pits and get their pit stop done. JST, Declan Barrett, Tycho Hardy, Valentin Labella, and there's another one in there somewhere. They keep moving around. Wilson Hall were the 5 that came in. So no one double stacking. That's another thing that our drivers have to bear in mind is, you know, they do still share a pit box. So they are going to have to... I've seen many a race ruined by an accidental double stack because they haven't communicated with one another properly. As Leroy Brown has just left Mirko Soriano in the dust on the exit of turn 5 because the Ferrari has no DRS, because the pit stops have now started to take effect. Now, what's going to happen with our top 3? Well, Yannick has actually started to burn a bit of his battery to defend that lead at the moment. He knows that he's going to be under attack. And that probably is a signifier that he's coming in soon as Mirko Soriano banzos the inside of Leroy Brown to retake 4th.
A great mid-pack battle starting to form here. Crucially, we've now got into a position of having effectively 2 races. You've got the top 3 fighting in their own little bubble, and then you've got Leroy Brown versus Mirko Soriano because there's 2 seconds between Soriano and Loke. That is not just time you make up. They're going to have to depend on the stop as Yannick Schmidt is going to be heading into the pit and coming off the hards, I assume, onto the mediums to follow the rest of the grid. So a little bit longer than the rest of the field who has come in, but crucially, I think they're going to be the first out of their main fight at the top, and that is going to serve to undercut them in a big way.
Interesting tactic there as Andre Molnar gets the fastest lap on his fresh set of soft tyres. Now Joseph Loke is going to be in a prime opportunity to attack Will Lewis here. Will using a bit of battery power to try and get some space between himself and the Red Bull. Doesn't really pay off because the slipstream is simply too powerful along that back straight. We know this dance by now. We've seen it for 16 laps or 15 and a half laps so far already. Now, that wasn't a great exit from turn 7. Doesn't cost the Red Bull too much, and it absolutely cannons past Will Lewis. And it's academic at this point. It's how the war was. I was about to say that Will Lewis almost hit the back of the Red Bull there. It's almost academic at this point because it's how they're going to fight towards the end of the race that is really, really crucial. We're going to see this dance resume unless someone's pit stop goes horribly, horribly wrong. But who's going to pull the trigger? Again, seeing Joseph just manhandle that very lively Red Bull through and neither of them pit. Are they going to go for softs, I wonder? Are they going to go for a hard-soft strategy?
This would be extremely aggressive if so. And at what point does the hard tyre become no longer viable? The way the time loss is just too much. I do worry, and that is something that we've seen in the past. We have seen drivers go for an unorthodox strategy, go for the hard to soft as opposed to the hard medium. And every time nearly, it's been a very rare that it's worked. Often it has been a case of they will make it to the soft, but they'll either lose too much time on aging hards or they won't have enough time on the softs to properly extract their worth. Or they overwear the softs trying to get off the hards. A lot of ways that this strategy can go wrong, so if that is something they're committing to, or whether they're just trying to use the hards more to stay on prime mediums for more time, one thing's for sure, they've got to time this perfectly. And timing it perfectly means Mira Siriano coming up into the third position spot against Leroy Brown, and Cordon's even going to get involved in the action as well. Big send on the inside, coming into the bank left-hander as we jump into the third sector. That is that Mercedes swooping up into a much stronger position.
Leroy Brown almost joining the metalwork of the Mercedes, coming into turn 10. So, is anyone going to pull the trigger? Loke is in, Lewis is in, Siriano is in, as is Cordiano, Leroy Brown. He was a bit, he could have double stacked, but it probably would have cost him more time. I suspect he had no real choice. He had to continue. His teammate Will Lewis, of course, being ahead of him on the road, opted to pit when he did. So Leroy Brown doing another lap, it's going to cost him less time overall, I would think, than double stacking behind his teammate. But someone that really has benefited is Declan Barrett. He's ahead of the likes of Yannick Schmidt, who was in that lead pack. So where is that going to put the second Red Bull when these next pit stops are dealt with, I wonder?
Timing is everything here, and that Red Bull is going to be very much fighting to try and regain. I do worry as to how these final positions are going to end up today. Declan Barrett is looking super strong right now, and he's going to be pushing with an inch of his life as he's going to be coming up onto Yannick Schmidt, going to be getting around to the second DRS. He might even go for a second move on JSD, but no, he's going to be playing it safer. That was a little bit too overzealous, I think, but he is going to be really fighting. The undercut, once again proving just how powerful it is.
Joseph Loke, he's right the way down in 12th, so that has not gone well for him. Will Lewis into 14th. So have they left their pit stops too long? Again, that would back up exactly what you were saying. The undercut proving very, very strong. In comes Leroy Brown and Louis Watts, the only drivers that had yet to see. Oh no, sorry, Tom, all the way down in 18th position. Paul Ashermeyer has decided to put, he's either parked the car or been, no, he's parked it. I think in the pit lane. So he's opted to call it a day. But the race is by no means done. But it's JST now leading the way because of that earlier pit stop. Is Williams, Red Bull Williams, Yannick Schmidt, who had taken the lead, bearing in mind, from the likes of Will Lewis, who's in 10th, and Joseph Loke in 9th, now finds himself in 3rd, again staring at the lead battle. And again, it's a Red Bull that is flirting with the lead, but it's the other one. It's Declan Barrett with Yannick Schmidt. Oh, that's going to compromise the line for both of them. Coming out of turn 7, as Mirko Siriano has had a bit of a moment. I know he hasn't. He's just been overtaken. That's all by the Mercedes. So what's going to happen up front? Well, no, they're going to get back into their dance, it would seem. But now we're going to have people really having to push hard, burn their batteries to try and close up these gaps that these pit stops have inevitably created. But some people have burned their battery already to nothing. Jake Humphrey's in 8th. He's got nothing left in the tank. So he's having to rely purely on slipstream, which is decent, but we've seen how powerful the ERS is here.
So much of a factor when it comes to this late stage, when it comes to no longer playing conservative and reading your opponents, but actually about staging and making moves and getting yourself up that field. The ERS becomes everything, especially on this track with the right setup. a good 5 to 10% ERS can negate pretty much any meaningful overtake. Short of a DRS boost, that is going to be insurmountable. So if you're in a defending position, you need to have a good amount of battery. JST is on 60% right now, so he's looking fairly strong, but that DRS is going to be very powerful, and he's choosing not to defend. As Declan Barrett is going to be pushing up into first. He's going to be jumping for those moves early. He's been really anchoring to get himself up at the sharp end of the field, and now that he's got his opportunity, he is not wasting any time. The JST is going to quickly remind him that patience is a virtue, and he's back up into P1.
Oh, and here comes Yannick Smith. He wants to make a Williams 1-2 here. Absolutely. Banzai's the inside of turn 9, catching Declan Barrett, possibly a little bit unawares there. And that is a great move. But Joseph Loke is just setting him up and laying him down. That's 2 positions he's just gained through turns 10 and 11. A very unorthodox pair of moves. But his tyre is much, much fresher. But Joseph Loke is pushing very hard to try and get back with that lead pack.
He's got a very difficult job ahead of him, though. The DRS is so strong around this circuit, and he's got 2.1 seconds to contend with. So he's going to have to put in the best laps of his life if he's going to have any chance of getting it back. He's already doing well. He's down to 1.8 seconds, so he's using the advantage of having 3-lap pressure mediums. Those yellow walls having pretty good grip overall until about the 10-lap mark. Apologies. 10-hour mark.
F1 Endurance League.
Yeah, I will say, Pirelli has been cooking in the kitchen if they have got a 10-hour tyre.
Well, the Williams have swapped round, so Yannick Smith now leads the way. Now, is JST going to try and act as rear gunner, or is he going to try and attack back for that top spot? We will see. What does JST do? He ran out of room, really. He didn't have an opportunity, realistically, to attack Yannick on that occasion. But Declan Barrett still not far behind. Jack Humphries. Oh, that little bit of a slide there, but he's still side by side with Molnar, who gets a really big tank slapper coming out of turn 9, but does manage to keep the Alpine under control. What about Joseph Loke, though? Less than 2 seconds separates himself and Wilson Hall, who is the back of the DRS train to the lead. He's pressing on, and he's amazingly managing to maintain his ERS amount. Will Lewis has just dispatched Jake Humphries again in a rather unorthodox play. That would turn 15, where he managed to do that again, utilising those much fresher tyres to his advantage, but he's got a bigger task ahead of him. Joseph Lowe, 1.3 seconds. That's a penalty for Jack. That's going to hurt. That's 6 seconds for the AlphaTauri.
And that 6 seconds is going to spell a death knell to any real racing that he's planning to have. He's going to be down in P14 with that to his name, and that is certainly going to hurt. Up at the top end of the field, up at the sharp end, Will Lewis is going to be making a move on Andrew Molnar just down the first DRS straight. And in that pursuit of trying to make back crucial time, Wilson Hall and Valentino Labella are 2 that I really want to keep my eyes on, as that Ferrari is going to be eyeing up a potential move on to the Haas here. How much are they going to push? They're not going to be burning any ERS to do it, so they're biding their time. I think a lot of these strategies are going to converge on about lap 26 and 27, because drivers, they are pushing, yes, but they're pushing for time, not pushing for position. I think a lot of them are going to be waiting till the last possible moment to make their moves, and then there's no chance for retaliation.
I 100% agree with you there. Joseph Lowe is just starting to get into DRS range to the leading DRS train. Amazingly, he's managed to gain a few percent in his battery whilst doing so. Phenomenal drive from the Red Bull. Currently 3rd in the championship. So very, very valuable points. But Yannick Smith's championship leader, is he looking at his first win of the season? We will see. We've got another, we've got 6.5 laps to go before that question is answered. And we've got some twists in the tail to enjoy before that for checker flag falls.
And let's say the top field is looking absolutely ruthless in their pursuit of time in their pursuit of position, as Labella is going to be jumping deep to the inside. They're trying to cut off any chance of slipstream from the likes of Wilson Hall, who is going to be pushing and trying to get every advantage just like they are. They'd rather sacrifice their own slipstream if it means cutting them off. You see that massive wide arc coming from the Ferrari there. That is exactly what we mean. As you see in the background, we see Joseph Loke and Wilson Hall is going to be tussling and coming to blows. Coming around the long left-hander, turns 10, is going to see Joseph Loke come up into P6. And this Red Bull has made a massive crusade. You've got to think, when we came off of the pits and we checked dip on him, he was P12, I believe.
He was certainly outside of the top 10. That was a wonderful move outside of turn 9, utilising the fresher rubber on his medium tyres, and again he's just maintaining around about 60% in the battery. That's Jack Humphreys into the pits again. He's had enough of those tyres. Well, he hasn't retired the car yet, so he could be going on to the soft for a bid for fastest lap. Now what does Joseph Loke do here? Will Lewis is 3.2 seconds behind him. He's the McLaren out of the bid for those top spots. I mean, he hasn't got a lot of time to try and do something about it. Here we go again, DRS zones, and Valentino Labella adopting a bit more of a defensive posture against the Red Bull. Bit of a statement of intent there, and again, JST is, Declan Barrow defending against Tycho Hardy. Oh, Valentino Labella off the road, and getting a 5-second penalty for his trouble.
That was a big bump. I think, Joseph Loke went very deep into the corner, and what we ended up seeing from that is that Labella bumped tyres with him in a big way. I don't think he had much of a choice other than to go off, so I believe stewards may be having a little bit of scrutineering applied to that one, as it did look like a very deep send. Looking at our final 5 at 6 and 7, really it's a P7, and looking at their positions, so far Declan Barrett looks to be getting a bit more antsy. He looks to be getting much closer to those two Williams as of these last few laps, and he's trying to conserve resources in order for these final few laps to pan out. JST is kind of serving as a little bit of a guardrail for Yannick Schmidt. We were worried, or at least I was, that he was going to play a little bit of for guts or for glory with his teammate and go for a bit of an aggressive one to try and get the glory out of his friend Yannick Schmidt's hands, despite being on the top of the podium in the championship. There isn't team orders. We do have, of course, teams, but we see the push here. Say JST is in fact going to go for it, just as if on my mark, as if he heard me, as you've got Joseph Loke now up into P4, Yannick Schmidt into P2. I think he's going to go for the retake here. Yes, he is. There's going to be a little bit of DRS coming in, but he's going to be yielding. JST is going to be staying out front, and they're not going to be fighting too hard really at all. So just how collaborative are these two feeling?
Oh, there's a lot of fighting going on behind them. Louis Wirtz and Andre Molnar side by side. I think Andre's either got damage or his tyres have had enough, as he is plummeting through the field now. There's lots of little battles going on everywhere. Much less than that, just over 4 laps to go, and that's a penalty for Will Lewis. Oh no, in contention for the win at one point in this race, and that is the absolute end of his race victory charge. He can remain where he is, but that's about as much as he can hope for. He's got to build up enough of a gap to Mirko Siriano, or hope that Mirko gets a penalty. That is going to be the end of Will Lewis's bid for top honours, but top 7 cars all in contention to challenge for that top spot. Tyre advantage with Joseph Loke. His tyres 2 to 3 laps fresher than everyone else's, as Caden Luke has parked his car.
Parked his car and he's out of it. Tycho Hardy a little bit in the background. You can see trying to push and break that slipstream from his opponent. Joseph Loke is going to be trying to continue his charge, continue his push, but eyes on Declan Barrett, as we can see everything going on from his angle. We can see, is Yannick Schmidt going to be going for a push on his teammate? He's going to be getting much closer. It could be happening soon, but again, no, he's going to be staying behind. I wonder if they're waiting for the last lap before doing anything. And Joseph Loke is so close to his teammate. You see, he's within a 10th, and he's not hesitating. He's not showing that same patience or yield that Yannick Schmidt has been showing JST, because he can't. He hasn't got the time. And Barrett, as good as he is doing, Loke wants it. He wants it bad. He's pushing.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's as much communication going on between Declan and Joseph as there is between JSC and Yannick at this point in time. What have we got? 7, 8, 9. 3 laps remain here at Abu Dhabi, and what a finale we are being set up for. 2 Williams, 2 Red Bulls. Don't forget Tiger Hardy's not that far behind either, so if people come to grief ahead of him, he is in prime position to take advantage of it. So Wilson Hall's not far behind. Valentin Lobella is, of course, in there, but with that penalty, Will Lewis has actually caught and is near the DRS range of the top pack, but sadly, that is as much as he's going to be hoped for. And that's Declan Barron looking on the inside of both Williams. He bows out of that. That would have gone horribly wrong, I think, if he committed to that, because that's going to compromise his line through the final couple of chicane. Final chicane. But what we were talking about in the mental game earlier, he probably just put a bit of a spook on Yannick Schmidt. And again, a defensive posture by both Williams. So the Williams pair are working brilliantly together. Declan Barrett trying to break the rhythm of the two ahead.
He's just trying to get into their heads, trying to spook them. He's really, you can see that desperation in the moves that he's throwing. Even if he doesn't fully commit, he's desperate to get under their skin. He's desperate to try and break down that seemingly insurmountable wall that is the double Williams. Even if they've traded places, the fight is still very much the same. As we come over to the penultimate lap now of the race, as Joseph Loke is going to be P4, Tycho Hardy P5, Valentino Lobella P6, but is going to have plenty of penalties applied to that to stifle that one. Wilson Hall P7 and Will Lewis in this sort of top bracket of cars is going to be about just on the edge of a second, but they also have a 3-second penalty to contend with, though thanks to being 3.3, they're not going to lose position if they keep this.
Absolutely so. I mean, Will Lewis, the best he can hope for is for people ahead of him to gain penalties as well. Okay, here we go again for the penultimate time. What are we going to see as Declan Barrett? I think he may have locked up a little bit there, going down towards turn 6. Decent exit, certainly for the Williams pair, but Declan Barrett then gets everything pushing towards the long turn 9. And no, he's not close enough to make a move, but neither was Joseph Loke. He was too far back as Tycho Hardy in the Haas, reminding us he's still there, was challenging the second Red Bull for that 4th place. Doesn't come off here. Final lap is looming here. It's all getting very tense down at trackside.
Trackside is where everything is at. Now this is where what I call the pendulum has been set. I often say, and I've said in rounds past, that if you want to win on the lap of the finale, or you want to win on lap 29 here, you got to be in second in lap 28, because if you make a pass on that lap 29 coming from second, there's nothing that your opponent can do to challenge that. So this is where we could see a do or die move. This is where we could see some Hail Marys come from some drivers, because they know that they are effectively out of time. Final lap as we come through here, turn 5, and this is everything on the line for these top 4 in particular.
It is all or nothing, do or die, feast or famine. Here comes Declan Barrett. Looked like he was defending against his teammate. Joseph Loke has managed to claim that 3rd position, but the Red Bulls are still side by side. That's the last thing Joseph Loke needed. He needed that good exit from turn 7. His teammate has actually done him out of the win. Tycho Hardy has pushed Declan Barrett down into 4th. And as I thought might happen, the Williams pair, well, they're actually side by side. JST has taken the lead back again. Is Yannick Schmidt going to hold on to the inside line? He wants the win. Mind you, so does JST. They're still side by side. They're not yielding. Oh, here comes Joseph Loke. Is there an opportunity if the Williams come together? Oh my goodness me, this is unreal. Yannick Schmidt has managed to muscle his way back up into the front spot. And Joseph Loke battles the inside of the final turn. Your winner here in Abu Dhabi, at least for now, Yannick Schmidt in the Williams. Joseph Loke has taken second, but there was a last penalty for JST that drops him down into 12th place. Well, for some reason now Will Lewis is now deemed as retired, so that's weirdly it's dropped him down to 13th. I don't know why, but that actually puts Tycho Hardy into a podium place. We knew it was going to be fireworks. I was not expecting that.
That was completely unexpected. That last minute, I knew that Luck was hungry for it, but I was not expecting 2 lunges in that lap, both on the chicane between the DRS zones and in the final corner, no less. JST, I believe he might have got a penalty there for leaving the track technically, following his move with Loke. So again, we're going to see if the stewards are going to take a look at that as we have our provisional standings here. Yannick Schmidt is your winner. Joseph Loke in P2 with Tycho Hardy in P3. And you can see the DNFs, interestingly enough, are going to be coming through, which has me a little bit perplexed.
Yeah. That's wow. We're waiting for Tom Martinez to come over the line. The last car on track. Oh, wow, that was absolutely nuts. Well, you did say the stewards' room was probably going to be busy.
I stand by my word.
Yep. Wow. Well, it'd be interesting to see who wants to come and have a chat to us post-race, but oh, what an incredible... I've got no words left.
Yeah, I really don't know what to say. I will say, I do believe that it will be JST's P2, just because he did get, well, jumping down all the way into... Yeah, so jumping down into P10 with plus 20 seconds. So that is confirmed. He got a 20-second penalty for leaving the track on the last corner. The game is very hard on that when they scrutinize the on-track penalties on the last corner, because they think that you're just trying to go for a send to get across that line. And that is where it gets very aggressive. So, like we said, we are the commentators. We are not the stewards. We, of course, have our insights as ex-stewards, but... we cannot say affirmatively for sure what the verdict will be. These results are provisional, and we will see what the inquiries pull up. And you will have to tune into next race to see what those stewards' reports bring. But for now, Yannick Schmidt takes the win, and Joseph Loke is going to be on the books as P2. Tycho Hardy P3, Wilson Hall in P4, Cordon, Mirko Soriano, Valentino Labella, Leroy Brown, Louis Welch, JST, Bogdan Moldovan, Jack Humphreys, Tom Martinez, Declan Barrett, Will Lewis, Lefted, Andre Molnar, Caden Lute, Paul Eschemeyer, and Jan Halliday. Complete your 20-strong order. And whoa, what a race. What a quali. This has been absolutely electric. I know that the real season gets a little bit of flag for Abu Dhabi being a little bit of an interesting, we'll call it interesting finale, but the mid-season here in WOR, wow.
Yep. It's so many times that sim racing gives us an incredible show that we don't always see mimicked in real life, but that's, what can we say? That was a fantastic. I've just been grinning the whole way. I loved every second of that, and I hope very much that you lovely people watching along either live or post-event enjoyed it as much as we did.
And hopefully we will get a chance to talk to some of the drivers, or at least a few of them who are free, as we want to get their insights. We want to hear what they thought of today's action, and more importantly, where they stand, how they felt, and where we can look forward here on this race and future races, because halfway point of the season, standings are, of course, looking very strong, very stacked, even more so now in Yannick Schmidt's favour, but it is not insurmountable. He is not invincible, and I wonder if any drivers are going to be pushing hard to diminish that gap. Knock Yannick Schmidt down a peg, and we will, of course, have a chat with a few of the drivers. We're just going to wait a couple minutes to see who is going to be around, but I guess while we wait for them, who is your one driver? Of course, you're coming into the com box on short notice. Thank you amazingly for that. But who was the one driver who left the biggest impression on you tonight?
Oh, that's a tricky one. That is a very, very, very tricky one. I would say, actually, it was the Williams pair. The way that they worked together in those closing stages, and raced one another as well. If I was to pick one of them, it would be Yannick. Just did everything he needed to at the right time. I don't think his win realistically is in question. Those behind him, that's a different matter. But Yeah, I will hand that one to Yannick. It was my pleasure to jump into the box. Like I said, I have thoroughly enjoyed that. I'm grinning like a Cheshire cat right now. I thoroughly enjoyed that. The drivers, well, some of them I'm sure have a few things to say to one another, as is always the way in league racing. But yeah, I can't take that away from Yannick Schmidt. Matching a real life GP3 driver to the thousandths of a second, and then to back it up with a phenomenal performance in the race speaks for itself.
It really does. Just it speaks for itself. It speaks very loudly, and of course the drivers are going to have choice things to say because this is something that they have so invested into. They are so passionate about. So the fires are out. The fires are fully stoked in light of this race, and especially when you maybe feel wronged in some cases, it's just 10 times stronger. I'm actually going to do something we don't usually do, and for those who are watching live, welcome. I'm going to pull a question from one of the chatters, and that is going to be: was Joseph's move considered hard, fair racing, or considered dirty in your opinion?
I'm assuming we're talking about the very last one.
Yes.
In my opinion, that was a step too far. You realistically shouldn't banzai that hard and force someone off track. That to me was too dirty is not necessarily the right word. It was too robust. It was too strong, I think. I wouldn't be at all surprised if a penalty went Joseph's way for it, but that's not to take away from his performance, because good Lord, did he put on some incredible overtakes. Just that one, I think, was a step too far, in my opinion.
I think I have to echo that sentiment to say he did put on a phenomenal job. Of course, coming up from such a low position in the grid, from pitting so late, but maximizing his pace at every turn in order to push through and get himself up into that top flight to the point where he's even in contention for those spots is a feat of itself. I think that last move and the move even I'd say before that, the lunge coming into the chicane, was a little bit, well, we'll call it forward. We'll call it forward. We'll call it a little bit aggressive. I do think, like you, that it was just that little bit too extra. And had he yielded just a little bit, I think he could have walked with a very respectable P3. I think to go on JST like that was very optimistic, considering especially he didn't leave the space on the exit. So he could have walked with a P3 very comfortably, but now I worry that if the stewards are going to look at that and maybe sanction that with a penalty going his way, he's going to be left with a lot less than a P3. And that's kind of the nature of things, to say you go too far, you step out of those lines, you are batted back down to make sure you don't do that again.
It's like we said at the top of the show, the rules are there, you know what they are. Let's be honest, a driver of Joseph's caliber and experience, he knew what he was doing and he knew the potential consequence of it. And had he pulled it off, it would have been an absolute masterstroke. Sadly, didn't quite go the way we would probably planned it. And in the heat of battle, you know you've only got a corner left. You make that snap decision to try the move. You don't necessarily have enough time to fully think it through. I can understand why you went for it, just didn't quite come off in this instance. But it does look like no one wants to come and have a chat to us, and I'm not really surprised. They're probably all quite knackered after that.
Yeah, I think tensions are running too high, and to be honest, I would not fault the drivers for saying, look, I am not in the headspace for an interview. I've had a very tense race. My tensions are high. The blood may be boiling from a couple of incidents that might have happened on track. So it's quite understandable and often the right choice to make, rather than come in all fiery post-race. Sometimes it's just, you gotta step away. You gotta leave it alone. And we may step forward now in their absence to look at the calendar and to look at Kota as our next track. And it is a sprint race as well. So quite the mix-up. We're going all the way from Abu Dhabi, typically a season ender, to the United States of America for a classic sprint.
I love Kota. It's such a great track. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's such a great track. Again, it's like Abu Dhabi in the sense you have to have a very well balanced car, but you've got some brilliant opportunities along that back straight. But equally, there's plenty of chances for it to go wrong at Kota. It's really challenging track that will bring the best, I think, to the fore.
It will bring the absolute A game of all of our drivers. Things like even something like turn 1. Going up the hill simultaneously means that drivers often misjudge their braking points if they're not careful. You have the extra lateral grip of being on that hill. So it's something to consider. And along with all the other driving challenges that this track holds, you've got the sweeping left, right hander of the chicanes just coming down off that hill. You've got the massive back straight before heavy on the brakes, another left-hander around, and then a lot more flowing as we come through the third sector. It's an absolutely great track. I love it to pieces like you do. Maybe not as passionate to call it my absolute favourite. That mantle is going to go actually to Portimao, a bit of an unorthodox choice, but it has a lot of personal history for me.
I like your taste. Portimao is a superb track.
Yeah, it's a little bit contrarian to some, but it has a lot of personal history for me, and I, for one, think that it is a very unique driving challenge. But looking forward and looking to where we are now, I want to say again, massive thank you to King Kodiak, an absolute legendary commentator, coming in on short notice to fill in for the ill Nathan Richards, and hope he gets well soon. But again, massive thank you for coming along, my friend. And
it has been a great honor and pleasure to be alongside your good self, Sappy, and back in WOR colours once more. Thoroughly enjoyed it and hope to do it again sometime.
And to think you were my first ever commentating partner back when I joined the F1 scene. Gone full circle. I remember that very fondly. But it's awesome to be back by your side, man. And we'll see you again. And we'll see you again in the chat. Thank you for joining us all.